Good evening. Welcome to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. My guest tonight is Rickie Sanchez. Rickie is currently in Tennessee. He is living, wasn't it Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were a cheesehead.
No,
um,
I wasn't born in Wisconsin. I only lived there.
I, well, actually, your journey started in Wisconsin.
Yes, or at least
So,
when I first started seeing cryptids.
so we've been friends for a long time. I know you've helped a lot of people come to terms with their experiences, and you've helped a lot of people cohabitate on their property. What got you into the cryptid field?
Well, it was really me being an eyewitness. Um, I know that when I went through my experience, let's say with Dogman and my property, um, my first time that I try to contact people for information, for anything that I could find, really, that would help me out at my property. At the time I had a small child, so the idea of picking up and moving was not an option at the moment. So as anything, if you have wolves, if you have bears, if you have any other animal, and I'm not saying dog is an animal as we know it, but when we have things of that we don't know about in our property, we tend to ask information about how we can coexist, or anything that has to do with their way of doing things. So at that time, that's exactly what I did. I tried to reach out to people to see what I can gather, so I can live on the property without having to irritate them, without having to cause any problems. And I reached out and I found nothing. Back then, there was a lot of fear mongering, um, a lot of uh, a lot of things that you see nowadays. Basically, it's just because it's funny because through the years, many new people come into the, I'm going to call it the community, but they're new. So the same mindset that people had back then are still prevalent today. That made me have to step back, let's say, from the community, from most people, and do it myself. And then as I found some answers to things, my mind was like, well, wait a minute, there's people that are probably in the same position that I am that probably need some of this information to help them figure stuff out that I'm figuring out. So it came from a position of need for me, of wanting or needing to know information about them and relating that same information to other people, that led me to how I started with the Dogman in general.
Community, in general, can be pretty cutthroat because I think we stepped out of it about the same time with the drama. And if you don't see things my way, then I'm just gonna blackball you and just destroy your character. It hasn't really changed much, but
It hasn't. It hasn't. The only thing that I've even back then, when I've had issues with these cutthroat individuals, is the fact that I was able back then and still today show them what I mean. So back then we had a lot of people, even like today, like you mentioned it. Shoot, we had people telling me, well, how do you know that happens? Or how do you know this does, or whatever? And I said, well, I can go to your state and we can go out on the field and I can show you. And none of them to this date has ever taken me up on it. None of them. So it's like
so,
you begin to realize who's who, who's not, and who to stay away from. When if you're asking for information, if you wanting proof, but then I'm asking you to come with me to your state, right? So it's not I'm asking you to travel 10 states away. I'll come to you, and you're telling me no.
yeah.
Then hey, we leave you at that.
So, well, that's a con. But some of the pro are some of the people you meet. You have a tendency to meet some of the best and some of the worst. But you've been fortunate to where you've, even with the drama and the cutthroat atmosphere, people continuously reach out to you for help. And whether someone agrees with your approach to it or not, you have really helped a lot of people and they stand by that. Is there anything that really sticks out in your mind that you have really helped someone coexist or even come to terms with what they've experienced?
Um, I guess it's the misunderstanding that the community has brought
Hmm.
um towards the dogman. Um, when you listen to a lot of things, the community tries to paint a certain picture, and that picture is not what the reality is when it comes to them. There's a reason for what they do, and once you kind of figure out that reason, things change automatically. And then once you start rearranging words, from going from the victim to the offender, let's say, right? Um, and people, I mean, I've had a lot of experiences where one that stood out. This happened a couple of years ago. A father was headed to his parents' house because he had left his kids, and apparently, according to what other people had told him and to what he was hearing from his parents, the dogmen were hunting his kids. So he was on his way with gun at, locked and loaded, because in his mind, his kids were being hunted and he was going to defend his kids. I was able to intercept him before he got to his parents' house. Um, and because through my research, I was able to ask him questions that in no way, shape, or form had he ever thought about it. And when I started asking him certain things, you can hear the silence, and he would say, "Yeah, that has happened, and it has this and this happened. Well, now that you mention it, yeah, has this and that ever occurred?" And again, you'd hear the silence, and he would go, "Yeah." And then once you begin to explain the whole, A to Z of what you're asking, he realizes awfully quickly, wait, time out. Then if it's the way you're saying, then there's no hunting. It's just a curiosity of young dogman seeing young kids. So obviously, mom, who's being cautious about her own pups, is going to act in a way because she doesn't want to get seen. She doesn't know if the kids or the grandparents are a threat or a danger. She's going to be acting and moving about like if she was stalking type behavior, but it's not really stalking. She's just taking care of her own pups. She's not even in the picture. It's just that she's just watching her own kids. But it might be perceived like that. Um, and sure enough, the father, once he got to the area with my information and what I had told him, kind of backed off, saw the whole thing play. And in reality, it was just that. Young pups, they were curious about kids. The pups would take things from the kids. The father would always thought that it was the kids were misplacing things, but that sometimes it was misplaced and put in a position where it wasn't possible that the kid had put it there. But it was just the pups taking stuff. You know, the kids would play
Yeah.
during the daytime, and the pups would come out at nighttime and snatch things. And take it here and take it there, move it here, move it there. And then it would show up. 2 or 3 weeks later in an awkward spot. You know, um,
Yeah.
so it a lot of those stories is what help people realize that, okay, the information that's been given to me right now by me has some weight to it because I'm describing to them what has happened, even though they don't know that it has been happening. Right. And then once I start telling them, they put the two and two together. Wait, time out. Yeah, that happened. How do you know this? Well, because this is what happens afterwards. Oh shit. Yeah, that did happen. It's like, well, okay, so now this is going to be happening, and a week or two later, yeah, that happened. What do I do now? It's like, you know, I had one guy from Kentucky, um, which as you get more information, I guess more knowledge, you learned the quick way of handling things versus the long way. So like for instance, and I always use dog training as a go back to because it's what I know a lot of. You can teach a dog through positive reinforcements only how not to do something, but it'll take you a lot longer, right? Versus probably giving him a stern correction at the proper time, he's going to avoid the correction, so it stops. So through the years, I kind of figured out. Okay, you got two options. Option A, it takes you longer. Option two, it takes you just one day, but you'll see them more. What do you want to do? So and so
Yeah.
this individual from Kentucky, he had a situation, and he wanted it to just to stop like now, like he wanted just let it make it stop. So I gave him option B, which he did, and the next morning he said he messaged me on Messenger, and you can clearly hear his voice say, "But how do you know this stuff?" And he's like mad, screaming like, "How do you know this stuff?" It's like, don't ask, just you're good, I'm good, okay, but no, you gotta tell me, how do you know this stuff? It's like a lot of trial and error, on my part, but I'm still here, so I'm trying to give you the things so you won't have an error from your part. Um, but it's been a fun ride.
So, when you first had your first experience, how long did it take you to connect the dots that in everything there's good and bad, but how long did it take you to connect the dots that you could cohabitate with something that looks so frightening?
Can you repeat that question again?
How long did it take you to connect the dots when you first had your experience? That, I mean, and there's good and bad in everything,
Right.
okay? But how long did it take you to connect the dots that you could cohabitate with them and they look scary? So naturally, you're afraid of what you don't understand. When did you make that connection that
It was in my property. So in my property, we had five um, that were all visually seen at one point or the other. Um, when I began to at nighttime, let the dogs out and feed them and let them use the bathroom, they'd go around, but they wouldn't come in, and they wouldn't. Some of the dogs would run around like crazy, and for any predator that has a fast moving object, normally they go after it. So, for instance, if there's a coyote around and your dog is running, it tends to come from behind to the dog. If there's a cat, it's going to chase the cat. If it's going to, every animal has that prey instincts of hunting. This would never happen. A lot of times they would come in, see you, and then just run off. And then the first time that I really kind of realized that, wait a minute, these guys are afraid of things, or can be afraid of things, was the day, and this marked a very significant part of my research. We were having a bonfire. It was like summer going into spring going into summer. So there was a lot of mosquitoes coming out. We lived next to the Horicon Marsh at the time. So, there was a lot of mosquitoes. And in the summer, midsummer, late summer, we would always have bonfires. So we just did a bonfire. And then because of the mosquitoes, we decided to stop the bonfire. Like, this is too much. The fire ain't going to stop the mosquitoes. Might as well just call it an afternoon and go inside. So we threw water on the bonfire. And you know how when you throw water on fire, it sizzles and it smokes and, you hear the crackling. And that startled a dog man that was watching us. I mean, and people will say, well, how do you know it's startled? Because of its response to the whole thing. I mean, it got up from where it's positioned, so it was significant enough where it, you know, now from a hidden position, you were able to see it. His head was turning left and right really fast. Then his shoulders started moving left and right. And then he would stare at the fire. And every time it would crackle, it would go, his head would move left and right. And then it bolted away from us. There and then I knew, oh, wait a minute. So these things do fear things. Right? These are not the they don't fear nothing. No, these things is an actual indication when you look at its behavior to its surrounding, to the fire, the smoke, the crackling. Anybody, I don't care if you have any experience and behaviors or whatever, can clearly see that it was bothered by this and it bolted. It ran. Right? So then that's, I guess, when I started, wait, time out. There's something not right here when it comes to people's understanding of this, and that led me to experiment in the property, basically. Just like you would do anything else. You have a theory, you have to test the theory out. If it works and you're alive, you get to do the next one. If it doesn't work and you're dead, well, I guess I can't do anymore. But I'm still here. So, and I remember one day my thought was, I'm going to go into the area where they're at and I'm going to leave scent, which was my cologne. Oh, bad idea. This is where you learn through trial and error. So I went in there and I left scent. And as I was leaving the article, because the whole idea was, if they smell my scent from home here, they know it's me. It's not somebody else. And man, as I'm leaving it on top of a tree, a sapling, was a ripped up shirt was part of my cologne, and I put it on top. From my front left side, you hear this fast moving object just running through the woods, and it was summertime, so there was a lot of bushes. So you really can't see. All you do is hear the as it's moving, and it got to my left side, and then on my I'm going to say northeast side, towards me comes another thing. At that time, my brain was saying, "What the hell is going on?" Then I realized what it was, because I saw the same one that's back at my house, coming towards me, but it stayed under the bushes. So now I got both on both sides. Could I have been dead? Absolutely. Right? There was, because I was by myself. But that yet again, they were being too stealthy, even though they were like right next to me, basically. So I'm like, okay. So I started talking in a calm voice, and people say, well, you talk to them. It's not that I talk to calm myself down. You have an inner voice in your mind. You start talking to yourself, so your heart rate goes down, and you're not panicking because you're talking to yourself. You're constantly in a state of motion, both mentally and physically. So I started talking. Yeah, guys, it's just me, and whatever. And I pointed to both ones. I kind of looked, because now it's funny when I look back. I kind of looked like the guy from Jurassic Park when he has all the velociraptors in front of him. And he's with his hands out like this, and it kind of looked like that, But at no time did they ever advance to like attacking me. I was surrounded. I had one on my left, one on my right, and basically one kind of right in front of me. There was only a log and some bushes that was hiding from it, and you can hear them right there. But they never did anything. I walked backwards and I left. And again, those are the times where you begin to realize, oh, wait a minute. It's not the way the community is portraying these, right? So then that led me to leave Wisconsin. because obviously we all know that if you study anything in its own environment, it's going to behave a certain way. But it does not mean that that same species is going to behave the same way in Alaska as it does in Florida. So I got on a plane and I headed to Tennessee, and I did my first experiment, which the researcher that was with me at the time freaked the shit out with what I was doing. But I'm still here, so the experiment worked, and I was able to call in Dogman that night.
She was the
And like I said,
female.
the researcher that was next to me, I, I was having fun, right? I was having fun. I had a bionic ear, so I was listening to them, and she had one pod in her ear, so she was listening. She was freaking out. I'm just paying attention to what's in front of me, because it was in front of me. There was two going left to right, right to left, and I'm like I said, I have the Bluetooth speaker on top of the car, and I'm listening to their footprints, and they're going around, and I'm excited, and I'm going nuts because my experiment worked. It's working. And all of a sudden I looked to the side and I did a double take, and all I said was, "Do you want to leave?" And the researcher, which happened to be a female, had her. And I was in a rental car. She had her legs popped on the seat with her chest touching her knees, holding her legs like, "Yeah, can we go?" So I
Oh
sure
man.
thing we'll go. Then she freaked out when I lowered the window. I needed to get my Bluetooth, so I had to lower the window to reach out and grab her from the top of the. So what are you doing? It's like, I gotta get my Bluetooth speaker. It's on top. So we left. But like I said, that also marked, because easily, if they were this aggressive, vicious, bloodthirsty creatures, you know, we would have been dead. We were on top of a mountain here in Tennessee. No one around, no lights, no houses, no nothing. And as we went up and did that, we went out. Fine as can be, So those are the times that, I guess, the times where I, starting it from my house, but doing the slight experiments throughout the states, different states, and getting the same results, led me to believe and to understand that we were all dealing with the same species. They might have looked differently, but they were all the same species with the same behavioral patterns for the most part, you know. And yeah, sure, I've gotten some ass wipes that push the limits, but I'm still here. So I mean, I guess it's not that bad if you want to consider it.
So you're like me. You've had your Dogman experience, but you also have your Bigfoot experiences. Let's talk
Yes.
vocals for a minute. Vocals. Where I come from, the Dogman, or creatures as I call them now, because you've seen the video I sent to you, the thing in the ivy. It was just, I don't even know what it was. Where I come from, for lack of a better word, the dogmen in my area, they stay silent because they have learned that keeps them safe. And they're not, because there was a time in history when, and it's documented, where they were hunted down. They went to the swamps and they hunted them down. So mine stayed silent in our area. Not being vocal is what has kept them alive and kept them safe, and they cohabitate among us. So when you go into Bigfoot, Bigfoot can be pretty vocal too, just like Dogmen. Let's talk vocals. Vocals, what do you find are the difference in the vocals? Is one of them deeper, one of them higher pitched, one of them longer, or do you think they can be confused?
So Dogman has a lot of vocals that once you hear them, they're you'll know it's a canine, right? It might be louder, right? Might be more raspier, but when you've been around dogs enough, canines enough, you'll off the bat say, "Well, that's canine, but damn, that's strong, or damn, that's long, or extended, or whatever." Um, because their howls may look like or sound like, let's say, a wolf times 10 and more prolonged versus a normal wolf. But then you have other vocalizations that sound like birds, chirpy sounds. If you've ever Googled like the wild dogs of Africa, how they make the chirpy sounds, Dogman make a lot of those chirpy sounds. And you might ask yourself, well, how do you know the difference between other birds and that? Is the rhythm in between. You can always tell that there's a different pattern of rhythm. It's a little bit louder. It has a purpose behind it. Now, with the Bigfoot and in my property and that I've come across, can they do the same birdie pitches? Absolutely. And there's some times where I might not know if it's a Bigfoot or a Dogman in front of me. But there are certain vocals. For instance, cats do this this predator sound, right? Type sound. It's a clicking, clacking sound. Cats do it, and it's very low, right? Dogman can do that in a louder pitch. So you're able to, like, for instance, one day in my own property, I haven't recorded, but the one I have recorded is from further away. It was in Wisconsin. The one that sounded in my house wasn't. I couldn't record it because I wasn't really paying attention to it. It just happened. It sounds like the movie Predator, and it's loud, and it was right next to me. I'd probably say like 50 feet from me, and your shoulders are going to go up. You're going to go, what the hell? It's loud. But it's one of their vocalizations that means something. Like Bigfoot can have a chirpy sound or a bird sound, but it's used to, I'm going to say, maybe hide their presence. Like, special forces might use its surrounding noises to communicate, where that predator type sound that Dogman makes, it's an actual vocalization from them, right? It's a purpose. It means something. They don't do it all the time. They do it when there's a specific reason. You have specific vocalizations when they're calling their pups. Their howl has a different, like a loop, a pitch to it, and it comes back down. So when you hear that, and you might say, well, how do you know it's when they're calling pups? Well, if you study the vocalizations, if you're recording your surroundings, you will literally hear, like in Wisconsin, for instance, you will literally hear that pitch. You'll hear, I'm going to use the word pitter patters, right? Little pitter patters. And then you'll hear little pitter patters and larger pitter patters leaving. So obviously common sense, your investigation, has to put all that stuff together where when you hear the vocalization, you hear the little pitter patters coming in towards the sound. Because if you're recording, you'll hear that they go from left to right or right to left towards the sound. And then you hear larger tung, 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 leaving. Well, obviously you're going to know that now you have little guys and larger guys, and when you hear that enough times, you get the picture of, okay, wait a minute, I just heard this. Listen for small footsteps. And sure enough, the people who are with you who have audio or listening mics or whatever, here they come. And then, you'll say, listen to where they're leaving to, left, right, forward or whatever. And then you'll hear, again, because normally, like, dad, if it's mom and dad together, dad will be behind. So you'll hear larger pitter patters, little pitter patters, and then the dad afterwards. Mm-hmm. So in Dogman and Snow, you might think, well, there's only one Dogman. The reality is you can have the whole clan. Problem is that the biggest one, which is normally, the alpha, if it's dad, if it's mom, because mom can be the alpha in some spots, are the last ones. So if you have 5 little kids who are in front of you, but you're stepping where those little guys are stepping, which footsteps are you going to find in the morning? Just the big one. And for you, oh, you only have one dog man. No, you have the whole clan. Problem is, like cats, they step in all the other footprints. And if yours is bigger, then all you're going to see is one set of footprints. Dogman also tend to roar like cats. Unlike, it's a different roar than a Bigfoot. Like the Dogman roar can roar like a lion or a tiger. It has that oomph to it. So you know it's more animalistic than versus just a deep throat. There's a lot of things that dogmen have that are cat in nature. Vocalization wise, the way they step in each other's footsteps, the climbing. I mean, there's a lot of little things that even the hunting. If you look at, let's say, tigers, how they do things, and you look at how dogman does things, you can put those two together, and it's the same bullshit, which is hilarious when you're trying to research a so-called walking canine, you know. But that there was a lady that I mean, we're still talking. Let's put it this way: it's been over 5-6 years. She's a long time eyewitness, and she has dealt with them for many years. One of the things, I think it was like last year, she ended up being face to face with one of the clan members. And when I say face to face, I mean if she fell forward, she would have fallen on top of it.
Wow.
She did not realize it was there. Long story short, she went into the woods where they were at to jog, I think it was, or something. And then she realized she didn't have her phone with her. So she ran back to her car, and the phone was ringing. And her husband, because her husband had her pinned, because I believe she had a broken foot, so she was like in a cast. So her husband was worried. So her husband, through the pin, realized that the phone was still back at the car, but he knew that she was going to go walk in through the woods. So he tried calling her, and well, she came back, and as she came around the car, the dogman was laying down with the phone between its arms, and then just looked at her, looked at the phone, and then just stared at each other.
Wow.
Obviously, she doesn't know because she's coming around the car. She hits the front bumper towards the driver's side, and her brain is not, has no way in shape thinking dogman. So she's coming. So just imagine coming fast because, oh, my phone is where the door is at, and she comes around and, holy shit, what the fuck? She interrupts with that. But there's something that she mentioned, and I always said it, I've always said it, the eyewitness are the gold standard to more knowledge. A lot of times they will say things that they might not perceive as important, but for us, for me, are things that are very important. So one of the things that this eyewitness said is that the dogman began to do a type of vocalization. And as she described it, I quickly went in on YouTube and I looked up, because that's how it sounded. What she was saying was a chuffing sound. So I looked up tiger chuffing, and when she heard it, she said, "Yes, that's how it sounded." The problem, which might go over people's head, is the only reason a tiger can chuff is because his vocalization, his vocal cords down here, is different from canines. So basically, you're looking for a canine, upright walking dog canine. But if it can chuff, that means this system here is not designed as a dog, because a dog can't chuff like a tiger. Only specific cats, big cats, can do that. because of how this is designed. So when she said that, like I said, for people like me, oh, wait a minute. So I started looking at other things, other different behaviors, and like, well, Jesus, all these years I've been doing this, this, and this just because I've learned it from the field when tigers do the exact same shit. So for instance, when do I like to make vocalizations? From a certain time frame to a certain time frame. Well, it just happens that tigers by nature, after they hunt, they go to water to bathe themselves. And where do I do the vocalizations? In a topography where there's water at a specific time frame. So I'm like, well, you gotta be shitting me, you know? So there's a lot of things that just my brain clicked when she said that particular phrase, chuffing. And it was like I started going back and forth. And I mean, because what I like to do is how nature process things or does things, and see the correlation between how Dogman does things, right? And then I go a step further to see, okay, so for instance, let's take the consideration of tigers. Dogman does this. Tigers kind of do the same thing, but tigers do this afterwards. What does Dogman do afterwards? Is it the same thing? Is it not? You know, because a lot of bears, for instance, might do the exact same behavior to some degree, even though they're different types of states and whatever. And every animal, same species, kind of do the same type of behaviors, even though the environment might be different. So that has led to more studying, which breaks my brain because I can't process it all at the same time. But you know, the more you go into these things, the more information you get, the more things you have to theorize, the more things you theorize, the more things you start testing. The more things you start testing, the more information you get. The more information you get, now you have to rethink what you thought before. And when it comes to the Bigfoot and vocalizations, Bigfoot does have some similar vocalizations. They can mimic their surroundings. But the way I look at it is, and again, I'm not saying I'm correct, but the way I'm looking at it, the way I see it and perceive it, Bigfoot does things to hide his presence like a human would hide his presence from other people. So it'll mimic its surroundings versus Dogman's specific vocalizations are his for specific communications, right? Unless it's I mean, in my house, they do mimic, which other animals do. Even tigers mimic boars and other animals to attract them to them. But in my house, they mimic a bird that you hear a lot, probably at 6 o'clock in the morning. And the first day I thought about it was, you know, it was one night they were around and I'm hearing this bird, except the bird was like, it was around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you hear this chirpy sound bird. And I'm like, is it them? Is it not them? Okay, it's them. But then you realized, but wait a minute, I heard the same bird in the morning. That's when you really realize, wait a minute, birds aren't out 24/7. You know, birds are not out 24/7. If the actual bird is up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, it is not up at midnight. It's roosted somewhere, shut up, sleeping. You know, so that's when you really realize, oh, okay, yeah. I get you. You know.
So just to go back to the lady you were talking about with the Dogman and the cell phone, this is not somebody just crazy off the street. This lady has actually a really good background, a really prestige background. She is not a joke. She's a warrior. You don't have to go in and tell her business, but I know a little bit about her background. She's a warrior. She's a warrior. I don't know how else to say it. So this isn't somebody that just sits home and smokes weed and sees things, because she has survived a lot of things that we'll never see. So she's
Yes.
very conditioned. Second thing is the predator sound. You sent me that recording, and we argue back and forth like brothers and sisters. Sometimes and over the years, you sent me that. I'm like, that's a cat. And you're like, no, that's a dog man. I'm like, that's a cat. But I heard that sound. You said, I remember that. I remember that. But you, as always, you turned out to be true because I've heard that, and it's I remember that recording, and I just wanted to say that. You're welcome, by the way. Carry on, sir.
uh, I mean, you always mention about them being, about cats. Um, but it's like, in my research, I get a lot of, I'm gonna say information, right? Um, but I guess I'm hard headed, if you want to call it that, right? But like I have to, so as my mind doesn't waver from my path, right? I have to jot down everybody tells me, and until my path reaches that section, right, and rather confirms it or denies it, through actual situations, then I don't begin to process it right away. Because
Yeah,
we all know in the community, everybody has a theory, a thought, whatever, right? Um, and this happens to a lot of people. They take all the information in, but then they don't know where to go, left or right, because there's so much information. You just can't really. Um, so it was going to happen where I'm like, okay, gotcha. This is what Vicky was talking about,
you,
So it's like, um,
but
and sure enough, years later, when this particular eyewitness, like you said, she's not your normal average Joe. She trains for the police. She's trained police. She's trained military, search and rescues. I mean, like you said, she's a warrior. Um, when she said the chuffing sound, believe it or not, and I messaged you shortly afterwards. I messaged
I
you
know.
shortly afterwards. You know,
Do you
I'm like,
remember
the
what
first
my
thing she
words
said at
were?
Chuff is like, darn it, Vicky was right. She was right. Well, she was. So that brought up a lot of things of why their paw prints are round versus oval. I mean, there's a whole shit of things that made sense
Yeah.
after you
Well,
realize that you're not chasing a dog, you're chasing kind of more of a cat.
well, we have butted heads so much, but we've always exchanged information, and 9 times out of 10, down the road, it fits together. I always tell people where you're at now, a year from now, you're going to be like, I can't even believe I'm exploring this or going down this road, but it leads you there. But I guess the next question, um, when you went to Tennessee, you weren't looking for Bigfoot, but Bigfoot kind of found you.
Yeah, yeah. That was. So we bought 10.15 acres, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and I got no houses around me. I got more woods, right? It's just woods on top of woods. I remember the first time that I heard something not so normal. I remember back then it was two RVs, and there was my mother-in-law, my father lived in one RV, and me and my then wife lived in another RV. So I was in my RV watching TV. My father-in-law had the generator on, so I'm inside the RV, and I heard this yell slash howl so loud that it override the generator and the TV. Like when that went off, You did not hear the generator. You did not hear the TV at all. All right. And I walked outside slowly, and my wife, who was my then wife, was on the side, also walked out. Like, what the hell was that? You know, and we looked at each other and we're like, and I went back inside. Okay, cool. You know, I didn't put two and two together. I wasn't thinking about cryptids. I wasn't thinking about, Dogman or whatever. Nothing. Bigfoot, nothing. So, okay. Then it was, I'm going to say that same month or the month after, I saw 3 baby footsteps coming in towards us up the driveway. They weren't clear, but you can see 3 footsteps that looked like a child had made them, basically, right? And my mother-in-law ran them over, so I never got to take a picture of them, or nothing. But I kept it quiet. Okay. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was, another animal. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't thinking that in general. And then one day I was outside again, because they left in 3 months after coming in here. So they were still here. It was nighttime, and I'm outside, and I hear a distant howl. And it's like one of those howls where I don't care what you're doing. If you know cryptids, I don't care if you've ever seen a Dogman. I don't care if you've only researched Bigfoot. But it's a howl that once you heard it, you automatically know that ain't right. That's not a coyote. That has to be something, and it's something big, right? So I'm like, oh, you got to be shitting me. Are you serious? But then again, I whatever, it was a distance. Okay, cool. So then one day, this is again these 3 months, because everything happened. Stuff started happening within the first 3 months. I'm outside, and I went outside to put one of my dogs in his larger crate. And now, so the dog's in a position where he can't see nothing. He's in his crate. And I heard the birdie chirpy sound. And I was urinating outside. Hell, we're in 10 point something acres. I don't give a crap. So I'm just taking a piss at 11:30 at nighttime. And I heard the birdie chirpy sound, and I looked up, and I shrugged my shoulders. Whatever, bird. My dog, which I call the cryptid alarm, because every time he hears a cryptid, I don't care what noise it makes. If it's a cryptid, he goes off. So he goes off. I mean, off like, get me out of here, I'm going to kill it type of going off. Not whining, no. This is a loud, rough, let me at him, I want to kill you type action. So he goes off, and then the birdie chirpy sound goes off again, but now it's mad. So it's like, I can't really imagine a birdie chirpy sound, but mad. Like, if that's the way it was like it had oomph and anger behind it, even though what you're hearing is the same sound. And then it just darted towards my left, and it darted so fast, it's like if I took my head and just went like that. It was fast. Whatever it was, like it went down that hill and it gone. Like, okay, that wasn't okay. And I walked back inside the RV. My family left. And then probably months later, this is where I realized that I had Bigfoot on the property. And so then it was a toss-up if I had a Dogman or Bigfoot. But when did I know I had Bigfoot? I took the dogs from the crates to in the kennels to use the bathroom, and they would go right back into their crates, and then I would head to work. And as I let the big guy go, the big dog goes around the van. As I'm walking his direction to go around the van and put him in the crate, you hear a slap, a 2-hand slap, right behind me, like right behind the kennels. Not 2 miles away, like right there. And my shoulders didn't shrug. I didn't stop. My brain shrugged and my brain stopped and saying
Yeah.
to itself, "Oh, you have got to be shitting me. Are you for real?" And I went around, locked up the dog before it realized that they were there. Came back around the van. I stood in front where the clappings happened. I acknowledged them. I said hi, and I got into the van and left. My brain was like completely like, what in the world,
Yeah.
Um, I've had footprints left, big footprints. The eye shine. We had another researcher, a friend of mine, that came down here. They did not like him. It was one, as he describes it, it was one hell of a night. They messed with him all night. Both the Dogman and the Bigfoot. So I guess they worked together. For some apparent reason. So he had a rough night. When I came in the morning, everything went quiet. When I would leave to like the gas station is probably 4 minutes away, stuff would stir back up, and then when I come back in the property, stuff would go back down again. It was quiet. So it was funny to me because I would leave just on purpose. It's like just, hey, what happened when I was gone? Man, don't bother me, man. They came on that side or whatever. So it was like, it was always fun. But we we had one night when he came in the next because I came home Friday, so I'm assuming that this was Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. Um, no, actually it was Friday. I came home Friday, so that night both of my dogs were in the back kennel, and so through his parabolic and whatnot, we were hearing growl, right, like a low, deep growl, and he's never seen a dog, man. He knows I have. He knows the people with us and our team has seen Dogman. Him himself has heard things that he can't relate to being Bigfoot, but he's never seen a Dogman, right? So he comes and he says, "Hey, apparently they're growling. The growling is coming from back there." But that's your dog growling. Your dog has been growled at me before. This is nighttime, right? So I said to myself, "Oh, well, let's go see, because I'm here. Why is my dog growling if she knows I'm here?" Normally, if I'm here, I don't care who comes over. She's not going to growl because she knows I'm here. If I leave, she might growl at you, but not if I'm here. So I'm walking towards the dog, and he's walking right beside me on my right side. And we're walking towards the dog, and he's walking right beside me. And I get, probably 20 feet to my dog. And I told him, I reached out, and I put my hand next to his chest. I said, "Stop." Like, what? What happened? That's not the dog growling. What do you mean? That's not the dog growling. Get back. So he steps back, and obviously it was them behind. I don't know. They didn't like him. I don't know what he did, but they did not. But other people have come, and you would hear, back before a lot of the activity happened, you would hear the wood knocks. So if a truck came in with one person, you hear one wood knock. If when it would leave, you'd hear another wood knock.
Yeah.
So I would pick that stuff up. So they were always paying attention to whoever showed up. But the Bigfoot there, I've gotten videos of their eye shine, footprints. I've gotten other things that I'm going to say. I'm going to assume it's them as well. They're always around. I mean, on two occasions, on one occasion they went after one of my dogs. And I won't say they went after the dogs, but they were coming fast towards the dog. I have a cattle dog mix that was a stray. Well, it wasn't a stray. He had bit the owner. He had bit people, and the owner was going to have a baby. So if they were brought him to the pound, they would have put him to sleep because he had a bite history. So I took him, trained him and whatnot. But for some apparent reason, one day he went into the woods and he like vanished. And this is a dog that when you call him, he'd stop on a dime and come back.
Yeah.
Like literally, you'd call him. I don't care what he was after. You said his name, and this dog would slam on the brakes and just run right back. To this day, I can take him out in public, and he has a bite history. But you can call him from anything, and the dog just turns around really quickly and comes right back to you. And I'm calling him, and he's like not coming back. And the first time, it took him probably half an hour. The second time, it took him 2 hours to come back. He'd always come back, but later, and you can always tell he was like chasing or running after something. Because he'd come back like really exhausted, his tongue dragging. So it's like this is not your normal stroll through the woods, because you're not a short nosed breed. You've been running after something. So one night he was going to use the bathroom, so he goes towards the front, and you'd hear. All I can tell you is it's a common vocalization that you would hear for Bigfoot. I can't really say it, can't really mimic it, but it's a vocalization that if you would have heard it, your husband would have heard it off the bat. That's Bigfoot. And they were coming up the hill straight towards him. I think he was peeing or pooping, and they were coming straight towards him, like straight at him. And I ran and towards the dog, and I yelled out, don't you dare. And I called the dog back, and the dog came back to me, like always, on a dime. He stopped, and he came right back to me. And the dog came towards me. I said, I ain't having this shit. These are my dogs. And you can hear them in the bushes, like, I'm going to use the word talking back to each other. And you'd hear them, going back down the hill and towards the creek. But that was like the day after he had vanished, like for 2 hours. So it's like, it sounded like, boy, you pissed them off and they came back for your ass. And then the other time was a dogman, because the dogmen that are there has a blue eye shine. So every time you see the blue eye shine, you know that it's him versus the Bigfoot. And there was, again, my American bulldog took her out. He's the bathroom. She goes out. She normally goes to the front. This time she went towards the back of the tree line. And she went in. And as she was in to use the bathroom, that's all she's doing. She's using the bathroom. The dogman comes from the back of the property, which is all woods, like all woods, miles upon miles of woods. You see the eye shine just rushing towards the edge of the tree line. Looks at me, stands up, looks at the dog, looks at me, looks at the dog, goes down as it's going towards the dog. And I bum rush towards the dog. As I'm calling the dog, he's saying, knock it off. No. The dog got startled because I'm going towards her. She comes back towards me, and then you can see it. It went back to where it was before, and it stood back up. You see, and you see the eye shine going up. Right. As it looked at me, and I looked at it and said, my dogs are mine. And it just went back, his eyes going back down, and it went back into the back of the property. This has happened twice with two particular dogs, but one was a dog, and one was a Bigfoot. And at nighttime, I have I gotta send you those if I find them. At nighttime, I have a sleep app that records me sleeping. So in the summertime, my windows are up, and the audio on the phone is very good at picking up noises. And you'll hear the dogs barking at sometimes, and you can actually hear like apes, like bonobo apes or chimps, gibbering back and forth on the backside when the dogs are growling. So you can hear that. I mean, I'm like, I have to get a live stream or something, put audio, and just record, because it's like every so often you'll hear like, are you serious? You guys are talking back and forth, and you're messing with the dogs. Just go ballistic. They start barking, and in between you'll hear them chatter between each other. you know, and I'm like, or tapping on something, or you know, whatever. So I gotta do that. I haven't thought about it because now it's wintertime, so the windows are closed. So you'll hear the dogs barking, but you can't quite hear if there's something else out there. But they're
So,
there. I mean, I've only seen them, you know, physically one time. I have their eye shines, their shadows, you know, of them moving about, and this is the Bigfoot. But one time I came into the property and it was looking through the window, and as soon as I guess it noticed that I was coming, which is kind of stupid because the driveway is long, but my headlight. No, actually, I had shut off my headlights. Now that you think, now that you mention it, I had shut off my headlights. It was only the noise of the vehicle, and I was going slow because it's my driveway. When I noticed something peeking through the window of the cabin, and I turned the headlights on, and it just turned its head back and ran. And I messaged Don. I messaged Don like right there and then. I stopped the video and I messaged him, "Hey Don, guess what? I just saw one." Because he was peeking through my window. So it was yes. I remember that one. And again, I don't know why I shut off the lights. I got into the driveway and I shut off the lights. So I was driving. I drive slow in my driveway, and I got to that spot and I kind of noticed something. So I turned the headlights on. Like I said, I remember calling them, texting Don, "Hey Don, I just saw one. I just saw one." But the rest of them has just been like noises, you know, the vocalizations, the tree knocks, their eye shines. For some apparent reason, if I have a headlamp on and I put the phone on my chest, don't ask me why, they can't figure out that my phone is actually on me recording. So that's what happens. Every time I catch their eye shine, it's me walking towards an area, and I guess they're trying to stay away from the light. But what they don't understand is that my phone is recording, so I end up catching their eye shine in the process as they're moving backwards.
wow.
Um,
Let Ricardo, let me stop you there. We're gonna tie up part one, but we're gonna go ahead and end part one on this cliffhanger. And then we're gonna move into part two. Okay.
all right.